What if the quietest person in the room is not cold, but simply someone whose heart has survived too many storms? What if the people who seem distant are actually the ones who have loved the deepest and suffered the most? There was once a person who walked through life with a quiet heart. Not because they had nothing to say, but because life had already taught them too many painful lessons. When someone has suffered too much in life, their behavior begins to change in ways people rarely understand. They stop explaining themselves. They stop expecting too much. And sometimes, they stop believing that someone will truly stay. But if you look closely into their eyes, you will see something extraordinary. Not weakness, but a silent strength. The kind of strength that is born from surviving storms that others could never imagine. People who have suffered deeply often appear calm, distant, or emotionally guarded. But the truth is, their hearts have simply learned how fragile love can be. They once trusted easily. They once believed in promises. But somewhere along the road, life broke those promises. So they built walls. Not because they want to push people away, but because they are trying to protect the little pieces of their heart that are still healing. And yet, despite everything they have been through, something beautiful still lives inside them. Kindness. You will notice that people who have suffered a lot are often the most gentle souls. They understand pain, so they try not to cause it. They know what it feels like to be abandoned, so they value loyalty more than anything. They may not express love loudly, but when they care for someone, it is deep, quiet, and incredibly real. In a love story, this kind of person is often the one who takes the longest to open their heart. At first, they observe. They watch how you treat others. They listen carefully to your words. They look for signs that you are different from the people who once hurt them. They are not testing you out of pride. They are protecting themselves from another heartbreak. But if someone enters their life with patience, with sincerity, and with a love that does not rush or force them to change, something magical begins to happen. Slowly, their walls start to soften. The quiet person who once avoided emotions begins to smile more. The guarded heart begins to trust again. And the person who once believed love always leaves, starts to believe that maybe, just maybe, this time it will stay. Because the truth is, people who have suffered too much do not stop loving. They simply become careful with their love. And when they finally give their heart to someone again, it is not ordinary love. It is the deepest love you will ever experience. A love that has survived pain. A love that understands loyalty. A love that knows the value of someone who chooses to stay. And in the end, loving a person who has suffered too much is like holding a fragile but beautiful story. A story of pain, resilience, and the quiet hope that somewhere in this world, there is still a love gentle enough to heal what life once broke. There is a certain silence that surrounds people who have suffered too much in life. It is not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of someone who has felt more than words can ever explain. When you look into their eyes, you may notice something different. A calmness, a depth, and sometimes a sadness that seems to carry stories no one else can see. These people rarely talk about their struggles. Not because their pain was small, but because it was too heavy to describe. At some point in their life, they learned that not everyone understands suffering. Some people listen only to respond, not to feel. So they slowly stopped explaining what they went through. Instead, they became observers of life. They sit quietly in conversations, watching the world move around them. While others laugh loudly and speak without thinking, they choose their words carefully. Every sentence they speak carries meaning because they know how powerful words can be. The strength inside them is quiet but powerful. It is the strength of someone who has faced disappointment and still continues to move forward. The strength of someone who has been hurt, yet still manages to wake up every day and continue living. Sometimes people misunderstand this silence. They think these individuals are cold, distant, or uninterested. But the truth is completely different. Their hearts are not empty, they are simply cautious with their emotions. Pain changes how a person expresses themselves. Someone who has suffered deeply learns to hide their vulnerability. They become experts at smiling while carrying storms inside their hearts. They learn how to remain calm even when life becomes overwhelming. But their eyes reveal what their words do not say. If you pay close attention, you will see moments when their gaze drifts into the distance, as if they are remembering something that shaped them forever. Those memories may include betrayal, loss, loneliness, or moments when they had no one to lean on. And yet, despite all those experiences, they continue to care about others. That is what makes their strength so remarkable. They understand pain so deeply that they try not to add more pain into the world. Their silence often hides a heart that is full of empathy, patience, and understanding. When someone around them is struggling, they are usually the first to notice. They may not offer loud advice or dramatic words, but their presence becomes a quiet form of comfort. Because people who have suffered too much in life often carry a strength that does not need to prove itself loudly. It lives quietly behind their eyes, shaped by every storm they survived, every tear they hid, and every moment when they had to be strong even when no one was there to see it. When someone has suffered too much in life, love no longer feels simple. For most people, love begins with excitement, hope, and the belief that someone will stay. But for a person who has been hurt deeply, love carries a different feeling. It carries caution. There was a time when they believed in love without fear. They trusted easily, opened their heart freely, and believed that when someone promised to stay, those words truly meant forever. They invested their emotions without hesitation, giving their loyalty and affection to the people who mattered to them. But life slowly changed that innocence. At some point, someone they trusted broke their heart. It might have been a betrayal, abandonment, or a moment when they needed someone the most and that person disappeared. The pain of that experience did more than just hurt their feelings. It changed the way they see love itself. When someone experiences deep emotional pain, their mind begins to protect them from feeling that same pain again. They become careful about who they trust. They listen more than they speak. They observe how people behave rather than simply believing their words. This is why people who have suffered a lot often move slowly in relationships. They do not rush into emotional closeness. While others may quickly express love or affection, they take their time. Not because they do not feel emotions, but because their heart remembers what it felt like when everything fell apart before. Their fear is not about love itself. Their fear is about losing it again. Sometimes they even question their own feelings. When they start to care about someone, a quiet voice inside their mind begins to ask difficult questions. What if this person leaves too? What if history repeats itself? What if opening my heart again only brings more pain? These thoughts create invisible barriers around their heart. To others, it may look like hesitation or emotional distance. Some people might even assume that they are not interested in love anymore. But the truth is much deeper than that. They still believe in love. They simply need proof that it is real. They look for consistency, patience, and honesty. Small actions matter more to them than big romantic words. They pay attention to how someone treats them during ordinary moments, because they know that real love is revealed through actions over time. Trust, for them, is not something that appears instantly. It grows slowly, step by step, through experiences that show them they are safe again. Because when someone has suffered too much in life, their heart does not close forever, but it learns to open only for the kind of love that is patient enough to understand their fears and gentle enough not to repeat the pain they once survived. When someone has suffered too much in life, protecting their heart becomes a natural habit. It is not something they consciously decide one day. It slowly develops after experiencing pain again and again, until their heart learns that being careful is the only way to survive emotionally. There was once a time when they gave their love freely. They trusted people without questioning their intentions. They believed that kindness would always be returned with kindness, and that loyalty would always be respected. Their heart was open, warm, and willing to connect deeply with others. But life has a way of teaching difficult lessons. After experiencing betrayal, disappointment, or emotional abandonment, their perspective begins to change. They start to realize that not everyone values love in the same way. Not everyone protects someone else's heart the way they protect their own. So slowly, without even realizing it, they begin building emotional boundaries. They stop sharing everything about themselves. They become selective about what they reveal and who they allow into their personal world. Conversations that once flowed easily now become more guarded. They listen more than they speak, trying to understand people's intentions before trusting them. To others, this behavior can seem confusing. Some people may think they are distant, mysterious, or emotionally unavailable. But the truth is far from that. Their heart is still capable of deep love and connection. The difference is that they now protect it carefully, like someone guarding something precious that has already been broken once before. They observe people closely. They notice small details that others might ignore. How someone reacts during difficult moments. Whether a person's actions match their words. Whether someone stays consistent or disappears when things become complicated. These observations help them decide whether someone deserves access to their heart. Another way they protect themselves is by controlling their emotions. Even when they feel strongly about someone, they may hide those feelings at first. They do not rush to express affection because they want to be sure that the connection is genuine. This emotional restraint is not coldness. It is caution. They have learned that giving their heart too quickly can lead to deep pain if the other person does not value it in the same way. So they take their time. They build connection slowly, allowing trust to grow naturally rather than forcing it to happen quickly. They prefer relationships that develop through patience and understanding instead of sudden emotional intensity. Behind this protective behavior is a heart that has simply learned the cost of loving the wrong people. A heart that remembers the moments when it was vulnerable and unprotected. A heart that still wants love, still believes in meaningful connections, but chooses to protect itself carefully while waiting for someone who will treat that love with the respect and care it truly deserves. One of the most beautiful yet unnoticed traits of people who have suffered too much in life is their hidden kindness. On the surface, they may appear quiet, reserved, or emotionally distant. But beneath that calm exterior lives a heart that understands pain in a way most people never will. Pain has a strange way of shaping the human soul. For some, it creates bitterness. But for others, it creates a deep sense of empathy. People who have experienced emotional struggles often become more aware of the feelings of those around them. They recognize sadness even when someone tries to hide it behind a smile. Because they know what it feels like to struggle silently. When someone has walked through loneliness, betrayal, or heartbreak, they begin to understand emotions on a deeper level. They notice small changes in someone's tone, subtle expressions on someone's face, and the quiet moments when someone feels overwhelmed but does not want to admit it. This awareness turns into compassion. They rarely judge people quickly because they understand that everyone carries unseen battles. Instead of criticizing others, they often respond with patience and understanding. Their kindness may not always be loud or dramatic, but it appears in quiet, meaningful ways. They are the ones who listen when others need to talk. They are the ones who offer support without expecting anything in return. They are the ones who try to comfort others even when they are still healing themselves. What makes their kindness even more powerful is that it often comes from their own painful experiences. They remember the moments when they wished someone had been there for them. They remember how much a small gesture of care could have meant during their hardest days. So they try to become that kindness for someone else. Sometimes they send a simple message to check on a friend. Sometimes they stay beside someone who is struggling emotionally. Sometimes they offer understanding instead of criticism when someone makes a mistake. These actions may seem small, but they carry deep emotional value. People who have suffered deeply often become protectors of other people's feelings. They try not to cause pain because they understand how deeply words and actions can affect someone's heart. Their kindness is quiet but sincere. They may not always speak about their own struggles, and they may not openly ask for help. Yet they continue to offer warmth, patience, and compassion to others. Inside their wounded soul lives a gentle heart that refuses to let pain turn them into someone cruel, choosing instead to transform their experiences into empathy and kindness that quietly touches the lives of the people around them. For someone who has suffered too much in life, love does not feel like a sudden spark or a dramatic moment. It feels slow, cautious, and uncertain at first. Their heart has learned to be careful, so even when love begins to enter their life again, they do not immediately welcome it with open arms. Instead, they watch from a distance. They study the person who claims to care for them. They notice the small details that many people overlook. How this person behaves during difficult moments, how they treat others, and whether their actions remain consistent over time. Words alone are not enough anymore. Promises once broken have taught them that real love must be proven through actions. True love, for a wounded heart, begins with patience. It appears through someone who does not rush them to open up, someone who understands that healing takes time and that trust cannot be forced. Instead of demanding emotional closeness, this kind of love offers calm reassurance and quiet presence. Slowly, this patience begins to soften their defenses. At first, the change is almost invisible. They may begin to share small pieces of their thoughts. They may allow themselves to laugh more freely. The walls around their heart, once built to protect them, begin to feel less necessary. This transformation does not happen overnight. The scars from past pain are still there, and sometimes old fears return unexpectedly. There may be moments when they pull away or become quiet again, not because they want to leave, but because their heart remembers the pain of losing someone they once trusted. True love understands these moments. It does not react with anger or pressure. Instead, it responds with understanding and consistency. It stays calm when fear appears, showing through actions that this connection is different from the ones that once caused pain. Over time, the wounded heart begins to feel safe again. Safety becomes the foundation of their healing. When they see that someone continues to stay, continues to care, and continues to respect their feelings, something inside them begins to change. The fear that once controlled their emotions slowly loses its power. They begin to trust again, step by step. The love they offer also begins to grow stronger. Because when someone who has suffered deeply finally opens their heart again, their love carries a rare depth. It is thoughtful, loyal, and sincere. They value the person who stood beside them during their healing, and they protect that connection with great care. True love does not erase their past pain, but it gently reminds them that not every story ends in heartbreak, and that sometimes love can become the safe place where a wounded heart slowly learns to feel whole again.